Okay. Yeah. Welcome to Project Management for Students workshop. Um, Here you'll learn about project management, regardless of what you already know about it, whether you are new to this or you come with a little bit of knowledge. I hope you'll get to learn something out of this workshop. So let's get started. Um, so some ground rules. The workshop will be 1 hour 1 hour in duration. We'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A. I'll quickly go over some of the learning outcomes and things that you'll learn out at the end of the workshop. So by taking part in this workshop, you will be more comfortable with managing projects and take up management roles. You will also learn about certain management practices and techniques that you can use for either your own personal projects or with team projects at school. You will also understand some of the common issues you come across when working as a manager or working in a team, and we'll also look at how to address them. Then we'll also look at how to set appropriate scope and follow through. This is one of the key issues that people generally face when they are planning projects and executing them, and we'll understand how you can not make the same mistake. And we'll also have an overview of several game development projects because I'm a game development student. Everything that I share here will be through the lens of game development. But that doesn't mean it's restricted to just game development in any way. Management or project management in general is a very practical skill that can be used anywhere. So we'll start with some introductions. Yeah, I'm glad that you are here for this workshop, taking out time for this, and I'm certain that if you stick till the end, you'll certainly learn a lot more about project management. So here's a little bit about me. My name's Madhur. I'm an advanced game development student at KPU ENTA, and I specialize in technical art and project management. I have a background in industrial design and user experience design. These are some of the games I worked at during my studies at school. I have been project management on all of these games and also tech artist and game developer on more than one of these. Often like one of the two game developers on these games. We are very fortunate to have several opportunities to make games throughout our studies, and they span anywhere between a few days of duration to a few weeks. And these are some of the ones that I've previously worked on. So now I would love to learn something about you. So yeah, feel free to use the chat to write something about yourself. Let's take a minute to introduce yourselves. You can even use your microphone if you feel like. That's always appreciated. Here are some pointers in case you need a little help. You can tell about your name, what you are doing, and what you expect to get out of this workshop. Let's take a minute or two for everyone to share anything. If I don't get a chance to read anything right now, I'll go through it at the end of the workshop. But feel free to take out some time to introduce yourself to everyone. I'll have to figure out a way to keep Zoom on the side. Seems to be problematic viewing chat. But yeah, as I said, if I don't get to check it out right now, I would love to go through it at the end of the workshop. Yeah, let's get started without spending any more time. Before we dive into project management, I just want to take a moment to share something or to talk about something that's very close to me and something that I wanted to include in this presentation. That's about learning, and more specifically, being curious to learn. So, whether you are a student or whether you work anywhere, whether you have previously had some schooling in entertainment arts, learning at school is one thing, it's more directed. But outside school, outside of your general routine, it's very important that you make a constant effort to reach out and learn more. Most of the people, I'm assuming, do or take part in entertainment arts because they really enjoy doing something. Whether you're an artist, you're a designer, there's really something that you're passionate about. So be more involved in it. Talk to people, read about it, and be curious. Just be open about what you want to learn, uh, whether it's management, whether it's design, whether it's art. Just focus on your personal growth and be ready to absorb as much knowledge as you can. And things like management or things like design, you may feel like some of these are not relevant to you, or some of these might not come handy at any time. But trust me, dots do connect at the end, and it's important to be open to learn new things as you go. So having said that, let's look at project management. This is Project Management 101, and we'll be looking at simplifying management for everyone. And we'll start this with a very simple question. So, what do you know about it? What do you know about project management? Remember, there are no wrong answers about it. Things you have heard, things you have seen, read, or just assumptions. Anything, just feel free to add it to the chat. For me, it was a big deal. The whole idea of managing a project, the word itself makes you seem like you are a total boss of everything, and that's not entirely true. There are things within your control, and there are things that you have to take care of. But there is a lot more to it. To help you better picture this, or wrap around this whole idea of project management, let's imagine a scenario. Let's imagine a project without a manager. So um, imagine you're working on a school project, whether you're working on teammates or you're working with your friends. You're working in a contained zone with a lot of objectives. You have set deadlines. You have to do certain things. So you have to account for everything, all of them. But as you can imagine, a lot of this can quickly turn very chaotic. Um, you will have conflict of ideas. You may feel like you are not being heard. There might be conflict of interest. And that's just the general outcome of working in an unorganized environment. So what a manager would do in such a situation is to bring a little organization to that chaos. And let's get this out of the way. Project management is a big, big, scary word. When I first heard about it, or when I first started thinking about it during school, it seemed very technical. It seemed very administrative, and it also meant a lot of responsibilities. That alone might be a very good reason for many of you to avoid it entirely. But since you're here, that's a great first step into venturing into the dark, scary world of project management, which I assure you isn't as scary as it sounds. But besides being such a sensitive word with a lot of context to it, it's also organization. It's also collaboration. It's also planning, order, responsibility, and direction. And now I'm not throwing around these words to intimidate anyone, but these are some of the keywords or adjectives that I've frequently used to describe the process of project management. And this can something that can really vary depending on where you are, whom you're working with, and what you're working on. But regardless of that, these are some of the generic words I personally use to associate the idea of project management. So, why does it matter to you? Why should you be looking after project management at all? I'll give you a few reasons why it should concern you. The first one is that you will be working in a project management manager. So when you end up working in industry, it's very likely that you will work under or work with a project manager. Or you could be working in a team that follows management principles. Things like Agile, Scrum, these are very, very common practices. We'll talk more about it during this workshop, but these are fairly common techniques and tools that you come across when working on any development project. Or not very surprisingly, you might end up becoming a manager yourself. So whether you are managing a school project or whether you are in an organization looking after other people or projects, it's very likely that you will have to take up a managerial role sometime in your career. So what do you really manage? I know it sounds very obvious that you're managing a project, but there's definitely more to it. You are not only managing the project, you are managing people, you're managing time, and you're managing resources. I found management to be a combination of these three. Now, these don't exist in isolation. Everything, people, time, resources, they are always in the context of a project. And that's something to remember, because as you're managing the project, as you're managing people, time, and resources, you have to follow, or you have to keep it contained within the scope of the project. We'll talk more about it. But let's look at the role of project manager in entertainment arts. So I found these some of the common responsibilities of a project manager, and uh, I'll highlight some of these. So as a project manager in entertainment arts, you will be responsible for creating and maintaining the task. You will use task management tools like Trello, Jira, Asana. Again, if you're unfamiliar with any of these, that's completely okay. We will have look at some of these tools. And these are tools that you can use not only for your projects, but also for managing various things in your daily life. Um, a project manager in entertainment art also ensures project goals are regularly met, and they are in touch with stakeholders and understand the project needs. So this could be stakeholder could be anyone that's associated with your project. Let's say your instructors, people you're designing for. Those are your stakeholders, and you have to understand and be in constant touch with them to understand what the project needs. And obviously, you are also taking care of the deliverables. You're responsible for making sure that we complete this segment of the project at this certain duration. Let's dive into some of the tools that you will commonly be using as a project manager. And tools are your friends. There's no need to be scared or intimidated by these, even though if you're not familiar, we'll explore some of those right now. So the idea of using these tools, the first rule is that you don't need to be a manager to be using these. Again, as I mentioned earlier, many of these tools that we are going to be looking at in this workshop can be applied to things other than managerial responsibilities. And another thing to remember is that different settings require different tools. And that's why it's so important to understand all of these tools or all of these practices, because when you know everything, you can be more flexible with your approach depending on what the project needs. And finally, you also adapt according to your team and project requirements. Again, this goes in hand with what we already went over, but uh, just be more flexible with whatever approach you go forward with. We'll have a quick look at agile methodology in entertainment arts. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. This, again, can easily get very technical, but we are going to have a brief look because I found myself using agile at many um, at many of my projects, and I still find it very handy because it gives you a way to be more organized with your projects. So agile in its essence is a practice in software development that ensures that you are more organized with your iterations or your projects. This is a very common practice in software development, and it's also used in game development, and that's where I primarily used it. So in agile methodology, you have three parts to it. There's sprint planning, there's the sprint itself, and there's sprint retrospective. What exactly is a sprint? You might be wondering. So a sprint is essentially a planned production period with a milestone. So let's say if I'm working on a game, my first project of the game development could be developing the uh, taking pre-production in account and coming up with the concept. I could spend like a week of that sprint time. That could be my entire duration, and I'll come up with milestones for that duration, and then I'll make sure that during that sprint, I take care of those tasks. So you keep things like task list, you do daily check-ins, you check in with your teammates, and once you're done with the planning, and once you have executed the sprint, you also look at retrospection, and you look at understanding what you did better and how you can improve it. I want to quickly go over Kanban board. This comes up very often. Um, don't be if you have never seen this funny looking board before. It's essentially a to-do list. It's not as simple as putting your task on it and checking them off, but it gives you a lot more flexibility with what you can do. And again, this is one of the tools that you will use very often, even for managing your own personal task, or whether you're working in a project with other people. What it does is that it helps you visualize the task and goal. So in a Kanban board, you will have different segments like these, things like backlog, a separate column for doing, done, and review. So if you put a task in backlog, it's something that you haven't started already. But when you're working on it, you put it under done. That's when you know, and everyone on the team understands that this is the task that's being done. And when you have completed the task, you put it under done. Of course, you can add more layers of constraints to this Kanban board, but in its essence, it allows you to visualize what your tasks and goals are. And although it may seem very, very simple in its essence, it can be as simple or complex as you like. And this is, again, a very, very powerful tool that you'll be using very often when working on projects. Trello is one such popular Kanban board. It's a list-making application by Atlassian. It's free to available. You can download it. Not You can download the application or use it on the web browser at Trello.com. It's free for personal use, and you can use it to visualize and work on your task. Some other alternatives are Jira and Asana. They work the similar way, but essentially all of them let you create boards for your task or projects, and then you can use those boards to visualize the task that you're currently working on. Your team can view it, and you can assign the task to certain people. Again, there can be layers of complexity that you can assign to it. But once you start working on it, I highly encourage you to give it a shot and see how far you can take it with your own personal projects. Some of the Trello tips I would like to go over is that keep it flexible. Again, it's very, very easy um, to get absorbed by all the features of Trello. But my recommendation is to keep it simple, keep it flexible, and be able to adjust as needed, because you might come up with a layout for Trello board and you can use it across several projects. I have also added a screenshot from one of the Trello projects that we did for our game development project. And as you can see, it has things like milestones. We also used it in a certain way where we write milestone for ourselves, where we clearly specify what pitch presentation is going to entail, what prototyping is going to entail, and then we would have separate to-do list, log, doing, and done for that specific sprint. It's as easy as moving one card from one section to another. The next tip is it's only as useful as you need it to be. Again, it's completely up to you how complex you want to make it. You don't need to have a milestone cards. You don't need to have bugs card. You don't need to have all the bells and whistles to it. The essence is that you create a list for yourself, you visualize the task, and you move them from doing to done as you are working on those. You can also use labels to highlight or showcase certain things, like give different colors to different tasks. Keep it regular is a big one. The tool is just a medium for you to get things done. And as a manager, as someone on the team, it's completely up to you how well you utilize it. And the essence of working with Sprint, working with Kanban boards, is that if you follow them by heart, if you do them regularly, then they'll serve you really well. I want to go over other tools, organization, and notes. We will not go into detail, but I just want to highlight my two personal favorites. The first one is Miro. I've noticed that its popularity has skyrocketed recently, and a lot of people know about this one. But if you haven't used it already, I would highly recommend using Miro. It's a whiteboard which has a lot of features to it. You can create flowcharts, you can add images, you can collaborate with people in real time. So it allows so much flexibility for you, whether you are a project manager or whether you're working on your team, or even if you're working by yourself. Miro lets you organize your thoughts very well. Again, free to use. You can find it on their website. The second one is Notion. Notion is also a task tracking or note taking application, but it comes with a host of feature and it lets you keep things organized. The reason why I like it so much is that it lets you create folders and files and keep everything very, very organized. Again, you can even use it for making Kanban boards. You can use it for making to-do lists. You can add or embed URLs to it, collaborate with people. It's again definitely something worth checking out. Besides all these tools, one very important thing that makes you stand out, that makes you not a machine, is soft skill. And I'm going to mention some of the soft skills that would come really handy, whether you're working on a team or you're working as a project manager. We'll keep for the purpose of this workshop, we'll examine the latter. So some soft skills that you can use as a project manager are organization, communication, conflict management, leadership, and empathy. These soft skills, um, they can often be overlooked because we can get too lost in Kanban boards, in Miro, in Notion, all of the tools that we are fully aware of. But what makes you stand out as a project manager and what makes you really connect with people are these soft skills. And I'll go over a few of these, keeping people at the heart of everything. Because essentially, there are two things when working on a project as a project manager: the project itself and the people. And we'll look at how you can make lives easier for everyone you work with. The first one is conflict management. That comes up very often when you're working with people. And if you're any familiar with the role of project manager, a lot of it is resolving conflicts within your own team. Here are some things that could help you. Establish ground rules. Make everyone aware of the responsibilities, of things they can do, things they cannot do within the realm of your project. Step back for a moment. If you realize that two of your teammates are having a hard time or you can't reach a conclusion with an issue that you're having, it's okay to step back for a moment and come back to it again when you're ready, and encourage other people on your team to do the same thing. Get a second opinion. So you could be working on a project. You could be in a lock and you can't find a way out of it because you're struggling with something. It's always helpful to get a fresh perspective and invite over your instructors, your friends, to look at the issue from a third person perspective, and that helps with resolving a lot of conflicts. The second one is empathy. Again, a big one, big skill that can be or should be used for everyone when you're working with people, around people. Everyone wants a good outcome. So remember that when you're working with people, when you're working on team, almost everyone wants and desires a good outcome. They don't want to jeopardize the project. They want to come up with good portfolio pieces. Just keep it at the core when you are talking with people, and make sure you realize that you have similar goals. Understand their pain points. Understand that the person that you're working with also struggles with various things. They might have issues outside of the project. Don't ignore things that happen to them outside the project. They need some time. They might need some assistance. Make sure you address those. Listen first. Make sure you do not act before you listen. And you don't always have to act. You could just be a good listener and understand people and what they need. Communication. Be respectful. Give everyone a chance to voice their opinions or concerns. You might notice when you're working in uh, with your friends, with your classmates, one of the things that you always or often come across is that some people do not talk as often, or some people need a little more space to communicate. So make sure you do not leave them behind. Make sure you give them a chance to do that. Um, yeah. We can let's see how we are doing with time. Um, I think since we started late, we can just keep going. It should end sooner than expected, but I think we can skip the break and continue with it. Um, okay, the next one is how to be on track, and how to follow through. I'll go over some tips for entertainment art projects that will help you keep things on track. Because again, it's very, very easy whether you're working on a team, whether you're working by yourself, or whether you're serving as a project manager. It's very easy to go off track. But let's look at some things that could help you. Keep things simple, plan according to time and capacity. That again falls into the idea of setting the right scope. Do not plan for things. If you have 5 weeks for a project, do not plan for things that could take longer than expected. Of course, it's okay to not have a fair idea about how long each task or all the task might take, but it's always better to leave more time than to leave no time or very less time at your hand. If you're given a 5-week project, try to aim for 3 weeks of work, and then leave those 2 weeks buffer period um, for you to plan for any unforeseen circumstances or things that you may need to address or issues that may come up. Um, I found that to be very, very helpful when working on game development. Balance newness and familiarity. Again, um, don't try to do something that's completely new. It's okay to take up challenges, but remember that with challenges, you will have to give out time to figure things out. So make sure you have adequate resources to take risk when needed, and take calculated risk whenever you are doing so. Understand your team. If you're working on a project, make sure you understand who you're working with. And everyone, as I mentioned before, everyone wants a good outcome from the project. So make sure you are on the same page, and then get everyone on the wagon to get started with the project. Scope matters. It's so easy to go wrong with this. Here are some tips that could help you scope better for your projects. Keep it simple, keep it scalable. You don't have to plan for something completed in length right from the beginning. You can make things more flexible for yourself and give yourself a little cushioning in the beginning and in the end, and that allows you to um, keep yourself very flexible throughout this approach. Keep it realistic. Again, it comes back to what we already discussed about keeping things more grounded and keeping things within the scope. Don't try to plan for things that you can't control. Keep it measurable. Give yourself specific goals, specific outcomes that you want to target, and make sure you connect with those. Something I wanna bring your attention to is a tool that I use very, very often when working on games. Um, it's a small tool that helps you bring your focus to core features and good to haves. So when you're working on a game development project, whether you're working on a 3D animation or a film, there would always be elements that you should be having that you can't completely do without. And there would things that would be like good to have, but you're not sure whether you should go ahead with them or not. So that's how I love organizing the projects. And these are the two categories that you can always count on. So let's take an example to see what how we can organize projects using this very simple but very effective approach. Must haves and good to have. We'll look at a first person shooter game set in a zombie apocalyptic world. So when you're working on such a game, there are some things that you definitely need to have, and there might be some things that you can do without or might come into consideration at a later point. Things like player controller. I need a someone. I need a player that I can move with my joystick or my keyboard. That's the essence of a game because it's a first-person shooter game. You need enemies. What's a zombie game without zombies to kill, right? So these are essentially my must-haves. And besides this, I would want to put them in an environment. These three things are essentially like my container, and I can't do a game, a first-person shooter game set in zombie apocalyptic world without these three things. Things like pickups. This could be something that's good to have. Maybe I don't need to have a health pickup on my game. It could be completely different if your game requires you to have health pickups. Make sure you have it in must-haves. Survival elements. Maybe I want to make a game where you have to use your survival skills to be able to survive in the wilderness. But I'm not sure about it, so I'll keep it in good to have. Maybe I want to get quests from non-playable characters. That could be good to have. And I could stretch it even further and things that could be not under must-haves or good to have, just like collective thoughts or ideas that I want to keep aside for now. Things like multiplayer mode. My game can do completely fine without a multiplayer mode, but let's keep it aside just to be safe. So it falls outside both must-haves and good to haves, and I'll only address it once I have more time at my hand. And of course, also things like character customization, which is purely cosmetic. That's something I don't need, but it would be really cool to have something like this in my game. So I would keep it outside the scope of must-haves and good-to-haves. Again, working on this tool, working with must-haves and good-haves, there are some things that you can keep in mind. Focus on what you need. Organize tasks based on priority. I just went over the example of a zombie first person shooter game. It could be something else for you, whatever project you're working on. Make sure you understand your priorities. Make sure you know what you must have in your project and things that are good to have and that you can do without if you can't do them. Your must-haves are core features. You should you should be fully aware of what you need, and you should invest all your energy and time in completing the must-haves. Because even if you can't get like a character customization, multiplayer mode, NPC quests, you can still completely do without it. So just focus on your must-haves, and that should have you set. Plan for good to haves to be completed later. Keep everything reasonable and realistic. We'll go over what to do when things go wrong. It's not the end of the world. And when you're working on a project, whether by yourself in a team or you're serving as a manager, you have to keep in mind that things will likely go wrong because it's a project. You have goals, you have deadlines. So it's very, very likely that you will go off rail, you will come across issues, and it's very important to know how to address those. Plan for changes. Have backup plans and scalable scope. Again, don't be too invested in one idea. It's always very important to be flexible as you can, because that will allow you to scale your project when needed and to fall back when you have little resources or time. Most of the part is putting out fires. As a project manager or as someone leading the team, you will be resolving conflicts, and it's better to do it before things escalate. If you can't figure out something, you are discussing and fighting with your teammates for about a week now. It's important to get yourself out of that situation as soon as you can, because if you can't put out a fire, you can't focus on anything else. All your attention will be diverted and directed towards the issue at hand. Be good at unbiased conflict resolution. So it again, coming back to being able to communicate with people, being able to empathize with them, make sure you understand what your teammates need, what your project needs, and be able to balance those. I'll also go over some of the gaming projects that I did. and some of the lessons that I learned. And I'm sure going through this project, talking about this, will also give you a fair idea of what I did during this and how I resolved the issues that I encountered. This one is Go with the Flow. It's one of my personal favorites. So it was a 5 week duration project. The idea was to make a casual game, and we settled with a cozy game where you have to throw rocks in a pond to move a boat around. Um, it was a new idea for us. We had previously not worked with physics system a lot in Unity. There were visual techniques that were unexplored. So yeah, it was overall a complex approach that we had in the beginning. It was 6 people in the team. I was responsible for setting up the goals, helping everyone keep assigned to those goals, and making sure everyone is following what they're supposed to do. When you have 6 people team with everyone having different skill sets, you don't want clash of interest. Even if people have different skill sets, some people tend to direct others or tell others what's a better way of doing their own things. And in that time, you just have to make sure that people are responsible for uh, what they should be responsible for. We also did daily check-ins over the duration of 5 to 6 weeks that we were working on this project. We made a habit. We made a habit as part of the sprint to come in every day to talk about your progress. This could be something as simple and something that can be done within 15 minutes of your day. So you come in, announce what you have done, share any roadblocks, share any issues that you may be having, and then carry on to doing your work. So this is important because you keep everyone on the same page, you keep everyone in loop, and that also increases the accountability when working with several people. You make sure that people are responsible for what they're doing and they're accountable for what they're tasked to do. This is our Miro board. As I mentioned before, Miro is one of the primary primary tools that we use for our development process. And in pre-production or the conceptualization stage, we use Miro or whiteboards a lot to guide ideation process, to organize our projects, because you can have a lot of ideas. It's very important to put everything out of your head onto something, so everyone can have a look, everyone can discuss and share ideas. uh, I also helped deliver the pitch presentation with the team when we were announcing the project in the class. During production, which is like development of the game, I was helping with creating tasks on Trello, making sure that we are doing regular check-ins for everyone for the task. And we were meeting every week, planning the sprint, planning our next objectives, and we would also review our sprints every week. We would figure out what went right, what went wrong, what we can do to improve our workflow. And I was also responsible for eliminating any issues, any conflicts that may come up. I was also one of the programmers on this project. So I understood what development issues we may come across. And if it's something that needs someone else's assistant on the team, we would make sure that is communicated well. This is how our Trello board looks like. The reason why I'm emphasizing and showing Trello board again is that Trello or Kanban boards are one of the most frequently used tools, especially when you're working with agile methodology. This is how our Kanban board look like for Go with the Flow. And this is the backlog where we would put all the tasks that we are currently working on, all the ideas that we are storing. And this is the sprint backlog. So sprint backlog, you contains the task for this specific week that you would be taking on. This is important, this distinction between backlog and sprint backlog, because you can continue adding tasks to backlog, but not all of them have to be done this week. Not all of them have to be done during the sprint. And this segregation or this distinguishing these tasks helps a lot with organizing them. Then we would put tasks under doing, the task that we are working on. And that's for everyone on the team. Everyone would tell or inform everyone what they're working on by putting their task in doing. And when they're completed, we would put it under done section for that specific sprint. Again, very visual, very accountable, and very easy to read when you're working on even larger projects. We also added a little section for us for milestones. This is like objectives that we were targeting, and it's not conventional to do this on a Trello board. But again, as I said, it can be as flexible as you like. So we added milestones on the Trello board so everyone could see, get motivated, and understand what the requirements are. Yeah, this was go with the flow. We had a lot of fun working on it, and if you're curious how it turned out, the project turned out really well. I can share a link to the game that we made at the end of the presentation, but we were able to accomplish a lot and do so much within limited time of 5 weeks. You can imagine that making a game from almost nothing to completing it within 5 weeks can be a tremendously challenging task. But we were able to do that because we did all the management practices. We followed everything. We were always on track, and that led us to a successful outcome. After all this, what can you do to apply, or how can you apply some of these management practices? And here are some basics to help you get started. We have gone over all the tools. We have understood certain processes, certain tools that you can use, and we have also looked at different things or different soft skills you should have when dealing with people. So what can you do? How can you apply all this knowledge, or what you have come across in your own personal projects or school projects? Uh, but the first one is manage personal projects. Take out time to start on a very small scale. You might not feel comfortable managing people. So why not start managing yourself? Start managing your schedules. Start keeping up a to-do list. Just keep up with it every day. That's all. Use task tracking apps. Use Trello. Use Asana. If you want to use Notion, these are all perfect tools for you to get started. Help people manage tasks. This is again a big one. You learn a lot just by teaching others. So if you can help other people manage their task, that would be an amazing learning experience for you. Scope your projects. Again, whether you're working on a small project, which could be anywhere from a day to a week to a month in duration, try to scope it. Try to set a timeline for yourself and see how you can follow through. And set reasonable goals. It's very, very easy to do things or to set yourself up for failure only because your goals were not reasonable. So make sure you understand your strengths, understand your weaknesses, and take risk. That's okay to take calculated risk, but be reasonable with your approach. Um, Finally, further learning, things that you can do to continue learning more about management, about learning management with regards to entertainment arts. These are some of the reading recommendations that I have. Making of a Manager, it's an easy to read book by Julie. She talks about her experience of becoming a manager and how she met with all the struggles. It's an easy read and interesting uh, insight into the world of management, even from an outsider's perspective that you can always share and relate with. Blood, Sweat, and Pixels is about video games. It covers different stories of how many of the popular games were made. And the reason why I put it up is that just reading about or just learning about how different people took up management practices and came up with development projects is very inspiring in itself. And you can learn a lot just by observing people, just by learning or reading about them. Um, that should be about it.